I was struggling in my marriage and balancing everything. It was a complicated time. Yes, we're tired, we're parenting, we're juggling aging parents, we're juggling jobs, we're juggling, infertility. I don't know, everyone is juggling. Slowly over time, I found it very hard to eat. Not, I'm always hungry and I always like a good meal, but I found it really hard to process food. Like things were just sitting in my gut. And it was starting to get really, really uncomfortable. I think that's a really great point that I love addressing. And the reason why I don't mind sharing my story about being a colon cancer survivor, I was dismissed over and over again. I am 5'2". I have, the right BMI. I do triathlons. I run. I walk into an office. I do not present as somebody who could possibly have colon cancer. I just think when I would go in to see these doctors and they'd be like, "You're fine." I was like, "Great, I'm fine." I was very quick to take that answer. I was not very assertive or very confident in my own self-diagnosis. I had never seen anybody my age or any woman. I actually went to several doctors, and I did, because I went and pulled my reports after this whole experience. I had written down to my mainstream doctor that my father had colon cancer and it wasn't flagged. And it's really sad, because then I went to an alternative doctor because I decided I needed some voodoo. I needed, off the beaten path, give me some supplements, give me, somebody help me. And she looked at me and she goes, "You're 42 and your father had colon cancer?" She's like, "You needed a colonoscopy 2 years ago." And this is a woman who gives birth on shower curtains. And I'm not making that up. This woman gives birth on shower curtains in her own house. And she was like, "No, you need a colonoscopy." Pulls out her pad and pen and writes me a script for a colonoscopy. So fortunately, it was then at 42 years old that from the colonoscopy, I was then further diagnosed. She pulls the scan. She goes, "You shouldn't have been discharged. Something's wrong. And I want you in for a colonoscopy tomorrow." And I was like, tomorrow? I'm like, I have 3 kids in 3 places. I'm in the middle of a disastrous marriage. I have pickups, and I had a tennis thing in Florida that weekend. And I was like, hard pass. You need to prep, and I'm not prepped. So that was a Wednesday, and that Monday I booked the colonoscopy, and it went from zero to cuckoo in a really short amount of time. She was like, "Something's there. We tattooed it. We're going to send it off for pathology. You'll get the results in a couple days." She called me that Wednesday, 2 days later, and I'm at pickup line, and I'm picking up my middle child at the time, who was in 4th grade. And I'm picking up him and his 72 friends, because this is what I do. I am like the Pied Piper, all kids in my car, everybody to my house, snacks are on the table, So she calls me and she's like, "Barbara, can you talk to me right now?" And I was like, "Of course," because I'm a mother. I multitask. I would never know how to just sit and have a conversation with anybody. And she's like, "The pathology came back and it's cancer." And I was like, "Okay, can you hold on?" Then I'm screaming out the window for the kids. My car's over here and the boys are piling in. And I'm like, "Okay, so she keeps talking. And I'm so in shock that by the time I drove home, I live 1.5 miles away from my kids' elementary school. By the time I got home, I decided I did not have cancer, and it was precancerous, and it was cancer-y. When I tell you the stress I was under was too much, that I was like, I can't have cancer right now, because I just can't. My kids are too young. I'm too healthy, and my marriage is a piece of garbage. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to say that cancer is not, we don't have time for that. So I'm going to take a pass. And the doctor looks at me and he's like, "You know why you're at Sloan Kettering?" And I was like, I don't know, I have to have surgery to remove something that's not supposed to be there. And he's like, "Honey, you've got colon cancer and you've got a long road ahead of you." And I was like, oh, like it was the first time I actually heard it, and I started crying. There's no right or wrong. It is your diagnosis and it is your experience. And for me, I did not feel like dealing with the emotional wreckage on the other side of a phone, or making a series of phone calls. I basically texted a handful of people that I felt were more like the gatekeepers. And I was like, and let them disseminate the information. And I had a lot of control over that because I was like, this is really not for the public. This is not, a Facebook post. I find women were all like, oh my God, I don't want to hurt their feelings, so I better call them. Oh, stop it. You do what? You don't feel like calling anybody. You just got permission from Babs over here to tell you don't have to call nobody. You have to do what you have to do, and you do it your way.
Okay.
And I did. I did it I did it my way. Who is that? Is that Frank Sinatra?
I love this.
I did it my way. I was like, you don't want to text me? That was rude. Okay, good. I'm rude. So's cancer. Go, I don't just the unknown, that I think is really a hard space. I think once you have your diagnosis, I think it's a little bit easier of dealing with facts, not fear. And when you don't have the facts because you're in the space of, I haven't gotten my surgery yet, I don't know the pathology, we don't know the stage, I don't know if I'm getting chemo. That to me was actually the hardest psychologically, because I was like a ping pong ball, a yo-yo. I vacillated between, oh, this is just going to be a surgery, and I'm just going to bang it out like my dad, and I'm going to be back in the swing of things, and I'm going to be skiing in mid-January. That was Barbara, delusional optimist. And then doom and gloom Barbara was, I should write my obituary right now and get my affairs in order. So the lead up to the surgery, I didn't have a lot of people to talk to. I will say that my dad had the same surgery, but a different surgeon, and his process was different. I had, I think it's called the Da Vinci machine. And so mine was laparoscopically. So I had like 5 incisions on my abdomen that were very minimal. And if you saw me today, which I would be happy to share, if anybody is listening that is gearing up for this, I will FaceTime you and show you what the results are. Because if you saw me today, the scars are so minimal, you would never know that I literally was gutted. So I'm really, really grateful for that. And then she draws this big black circle underneath my belt line. And I was like, what's that? And she's like, well, if the surgery doesn't go well, or I'm sorry, that's not the right way to phrase it. There could be complications, maybe she said. My interpretation of what was said is you've got to give me some space. I don't remember exactly what she said, but if I'm like to say what what she was saying is I could have a bag. I could have a bag attached to me for my waist. It's called an ileostomy bag, or I'm messing up the words, but whatever it was, all I heard was a shit bag. I was like, what, you're marking me? You're literally marking me right now for a bag of poop. And I was like, literally, my marriage is done. I've just been diagnosed with cancer. I have 3 kids. My kids are 4 years old, 10 and 12. And now somebody is marking me for a poop bag. I am like, I cannot believe this. And I was like, well, what do you mean? And where do you, I'm like, I don't understand. Am I going to wake up with a bag attached to me, and does the bag go back? Like, how does this bag work? Just for me, if I'm to be truly honest, I'm probably a little more on the vain side. I try to take care of myself. I was about ready to become a single woman and start dating, and I was like, really like, well, that's going to be something to talk about on a first date. By the way, I have 3 kids in a poop bag. So yeah, I wasn't excited. That was a tough one. And I just hope I'm not offending anybody with how I internalize that.
No.
Listen, it could happen. It could happen to anybody. And I think a lot of people out there are handling that byproduct of colon cancer very, very well. I remember waking up like I was in the best mood. I was like, well, and all I cared is, did I have a bag? That's all I'm like, is there a bag? Is there a bag? Do I have a bag? Do I have a bag? And I was very like loving, and like I loved everyone. I loved the nurses, and I loved the doctors, and I was high as I've never seen. I don't know. I was in La La Land. So the pain and the reality did not kick in until the next day. I was hungry. I remember I wanted to eat, but that's, it's kind of me. So I was on oxaliplatin, which was my infusion. Now I started on one thing, which was Folfox, and then I went to capecitabine, but it's hard for me because it was a while ago and chemo does a number on your brain. I believe I went every 2 weeks for my infusions because I think I had 12 rounds of you're supposed to do it for 12 rounds, 6 months, every 2 weeks. And I only would go in for one infusion. Like the infusion would be several hours. And to say I was sick would be an understatement. I would get violently ill. And then I chose to do the oral chemo along with the oxaliplatin. So you do 2 chemos when you have colon cancer. I believe I traded out my Folfox for Capox, which is capecitabine, but shoot me dead if I don't know. I'm somewhere in that vein. All I know is that I had to do like 14 days. Oh God, 7 days of an oral pill, and they were horrible. Everything was horrible. They have nothing. It was horrible. I hated chemo. I hated it. I thought, I had delusional expectations because I would see people who had like lost their hair and other chemo treatments, like do yoga and soul cycle and I couldn't even drive a car. I was blinded with nausea. I could walk. I did a lot of walking through my chemo. Every of glass, if you drink something, it's the worst. It's like you take the drink and then shards of glass. You feel it's the worst. I still can't I actually don't drink cold water anymore. I don't like cold anything. I had this, I remember trying to go for a walk once with my friend Jill, and it was 2 days after my chemo treatments. And I could feel like my skin, there was something in my body. It was almost like the neuropathy that you have in your fingers, but it was all through I remember feeling it on my thighs and my legs, and my whole body just was like, it's like the poison was going everywhere. So my body felt so gross. The nausea was blinding. Towards the end, I couldn't string 2 thoughts together. I couldn't drive a car. I couldn't focus after my infusions. I remember driving once to go pick up medicine at a supermarket, or I'm sorry, the drugstore. And I'm like, ooh, let me put on my lip gloss. And I'm like driving. I just was so unfocused. I thought, you know what? I don't belong on the road. And I really struggled with my bearings and my thoughts. But the nausea was blinding. My friend, I remember from Israel, she was like, a ginger tea. We did the ginger tea concoctions. I tried acupuncture. I tried massage. I couldn't do anything. Nothing worked for me. I'm going to tell you that right now. Absolutely, positively, nothing worked. The only time I felt that it could abate it for a little bit was walking. And I think that was more of like a distraction than a real, anything. But living this great life and being happy and fulfilled and, being with my kids and trying new things and not waiting. Like life is like, listen, it's all about the dash, right? It's all about, your date of birth, 1973 for this lady, and the dash, and then where it ends. And you really only control the dash. So it's like, what are you doing between now and then? And for me, I really just try to live a really positive life and stay away from things that aren't serving me and people that aren't good for me. And go for it. I book the trip, spend the air miles, get out of your own way, try the new career, leave a crappy relationship, throw out what's not working for you and invite a new opportunity. Living in fear of a bad diagnosis doesn't, you got to kind of find a good place for that. And for me, it's more motivation of like, I can only do the dash, and the dash is like in my power. I'm going to make it a good dash.